So thank you, everyone. I'm excited for this conversation. I was telling Vanessa before, I really am fangirling it right now with her. I mean, you have an amazing trajectory. You've worked for some very iconic brands. So let's start with that. Let's talk a little bit about your journey and what has led you to Savage Fenty.
Of course. Well, thank you first and foremost for having me here. Brand Innovators is always a really fun event. And yes, I'm super excited. The panel before was really interesting. I look up to obviously female founders, which is why I'm actually at Savage. And I have a friend in the audience who actually did work with me at Nike. So it's always good to see familiar faces. But yeah, I started my career, what I like to say, at the intersection of sport and inclusivity. So it's always has been important to me. I was one of those individuals where sport was incredibly important. I played basketball growing up, and it's actually the reason why I chose to go to University of Texas, because it was one of the, I'll age myself a little bit, and I love what's happening in sport right now for women, but it was one of the pioneers in women's sport, and I wanted to go somewhere that actually truly put their money where their mouth was in terms of the type of opportunities they afforded us. And so I made that decision, and then went on to work for an agency where I grew up working on P&G brands, and so understood brand marketing and data. I know the last conversation was how you use insights and data to kind of drive those business priorities. And then had the opportunity to go work at Nike, which was a dream opportunity for me. And I spent nearly 2 decades there, and was able to kind of further enhance my craft of the art of storytelling and the art and science of marketing, which I think is incredibly important as I sit in this seat. And then as I was looking at what's next for me, obviously I've been a long admirer of Rihanna, not just because of her amazing talent as a musician, but when you start to think about someone who's truly a visionary and what she was able to accomplish with her businesses, and then being a hands-on mom and now a mom of 3, and what she disrupted by creating this brand that is Savage X Fenty, built on the opportunity to empower communities that had not been spoken to in that way, was truly inspiring. So I wanted to be a part of that, the brand. And we like to say that we're not just a brand, we truly are a movement, and we put inclusivity at the core of what we do. And it's a business imperative for us.
So it's been a good transition.
Yeah, it's been a great transition. As I think about it, it's been 15 months, but a lot of learning. I'm incredibly blessed to go lead a team that's really creative. My peer group are really talented and challenging, and so it's been a lot of fun.
I feel like you're in the listening tour stage still, too, though, of this phase.
Oh, gosh, yeah. The intimates industry, which is also really important to have Fleur de Mal up here earlier, it is a huge business. And so I came from apparel and sport, which was a little different. And so to understand that marketplace, to understand how consumers buy, personally how I purchase my intimates is a little different. And so then going down to understand our consumers, we're an e-com based business, have a select doors in US, and then have just opened up some partner doors or wholesale accounts in North America as well as in our European business. So it was a lot for me to understand the business piece of it. And then I think just like any other leader, understanding your team. And so to your point, that listening tour to figure out. And then this is my first CMO seat. So there is no playbook, as we all know. And I think as leaders, I think every year we learn like there's some unprecedented thing that happens, and you have to lead with courage through some incredible times. And so it's been a lot to learn about for myself in my own personal leadership journey, but it's been an amazing experience. And then I think, and I said it before, but I think being able to see Rihanna in action and how she challenges the team, has vision, and her being in the work and also pushing us to continue to innovate in new and different ways as we think about it has been an experience that's kind of unforgettable. So again, 15 months, I can't believe. Some days I'm like, it's only been 15 months, but yeah, it's been a great time.
So let's talk a little bit more about the difference in the role, right? Because
Yeah.
right now you are in the intimacy apparel, and the reality is this has been one of the, I would say, the sections that has neglected its consumer
Yeah.
for a really long time. But the brand has seen the opportunity, has seen the gap. So what have you done to like really tackle this, and which is your differentiator in the marketplace, right?
Yeah, the brand was born out of this idea of hearing from, audiences and communities that were, otherwise unheard or overlooked. And so we pride ourselves in that inclusivity. So when you think about genders, when we think about race, when you think about sizes, so we do incredible work. Our team, in terms of making sure we offer bra sizes in 47 different sizes. So when we talk about
Your
running the
mic
gamut,
went up.
up a little
Oh, there
bit.
you go.
Okay, sorry. When we talk about running the gamut, we really take that to heart, and we see that as a part of our cornerstone and our value as a brand. That's number one. I think the second piece, as we think about inclusivity, is how we show up. So one of the first things I was able to work on, which was super exciting for me, is Valentine's Day. It is our Super Bowl, which is kind of different coming from the sport world. Valentine's Day was my Super Bowl. So last year, as I was getting ready for it, our country was an interesting time, and we had a campaign. It was called Love Your Way. And so it debuted in January. But as we thought about that campaign and the insights around it, is Rihanna is affectionately called the patron saint of Valentine's. And so we cast her as Cupid. And so she had her Cupid's arrow bow. And then she inspired other communities and consumers and we wanted to tell their stories. And so we made sure we were really intentional and deliberate as we cast the muses for that particular campaign, that we showed up for all different communities. And so same-sex individuals, girlfriends, so you can think about love on that day as platonic or galantines. We also had sisters, if you think about sibling love. And so what we wanted to make sure that we showed up in that moment is, no matter how you celebrate that day, we not only have the products to show up and for you to outfit yourself in, but we can celebrate love in its many different forms. And while that seems like a pretty novel idea, not many brands do that. And if you think about the geopolitical landscape that we were in, and how there were so many brands walking back different commitments they had made, and this was in January of last year. And so it was a moment for us to make sure that we double down on our values and our commitments to our community. And it's not just the right thing to do. I think we see this as how we show up as a brand, but it also is a catalyst for our business. And so it is how we unlock our potential, and it's how we think about innovation.
And I think it comes so authentically to your brand, right?
Yeah,
because the
absolutely.
product is always done with the intentionality of inclusivity. So marketing is not an afterthought.
Absolutely.
It really is from inception. And I do think that is a very strong differentiator, but the consumer is able and understands this from the brand.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how technology actually plays a role here, because we talked about how you show up in marketing spaces and the inclusivity there. But of course, this is a media conference. We're in a tech world.
Yeah.
How does technology come to help you aid in this mission of inclusivity?
Yeah, I think in two ways. One, our team does a lot with data and analytics. We are an e-com-based business, but we're all a subscription-based business. And so we have nearly 1 million VIPs who come to our brand. And so we get the opportunity to speak to men and women all the time about what they love, what they like. And so what's been really incredible as I did my listening tour is that sometimes our DNA team will have focus groups, and you'll have people talking to us in their bathrooms, in their robes, in their intimates, and they see themselves as an extension of the brand. So that connection is super incredible. So we leverage those insights, obviously, to drive product innovation. We leverage those insights to make our technology better. When we were redesigning our new site, we made sure that we had some of those VIPs go through an experience, first and foremost, to understand what was working, what were the friction points, how we can be better in our processes. We're also thinking about continually to make sure that we engage with our VIPs. And so over the next couple of weeks to months, we're thinking about how do we provide services to our VIPs first? How do we continue to leverage them as our ambassadors for the brand? Because they obviously come back to the brand month over month. And so we see that as one unlock for us, but we leverage technology to service them quicker and serve them up content, experiences, promotions, or exclusive access to the brand that only we can provide such a coveted cohort of individuals.
So I think you touched on this a little bit about the emotional connection, really, the art storytelling that comes naturally to this brand. But you do work with a lot of brand ambassadors.
Yeah.
How do you go through that process, and how do you ensure that the messaging and the marketing that's going into the place is reflective of your brand values?
Yes. I think the last panel talked about it too. I think we have I have incredibly talented individuals on my team, and so sometimes they also keep me in the know. I always think I want to keep my pulse on culture, but I think listening and hearing, social listening, knowing what's happening. And one of those great examples is it was a year and a half ago. Rihanna was in Paris, and she had a viral moment, as she normally does, and she sings a song, TGIF, and it was based on a rapper, Glorilla. And there was a lot of mutual respect that Ree had with Glow. I tell that story because one of our first brand ambassadors came from that moment. And it was because the viral moment happened and so many of our consumers actually commented on it. And they talked about the fact that they would love to see Glow in a campaign, and they would love to see this collaboration between the two artists. And so we immediately got on the opportunity. And so last February, she actually was debuted, and she was one of the first all Fenty verse. So across beauty, Savage, as well as skin and hair, global ambassadors for us. And so it is about us understanding our audience, listening to culture, and understanding and moving at the speed of culture to kind of listening to respond. And not only did we give the people what they wanted to hear and see, but we also were able to be authentically ourselves, because Glow obviously was on an incredible run last year, and she exemplifies our values, but there was a natural connection between she and Ree. Was really, really great. And so we continue to think about how we have brand ambassadors in certain spaces that can continue to echo and amplify our voice. And then that's on a macro level. But I think for us, we also don't want to forget our communities. And so last month, I know earlier there was a conversation around it being currently Filipino Heritage Month. There was Latin Hispanic Heritage Month, last month. And so we don't ever want to be performative in those moments, but we absolutely want to make sure that as we talk about our storytelling and we have community members, we amplify their stories. And so we had creators who are part of our micro ambassador program, and they were able to talk about how they style their everyday Savage. And so it's a segment we do all the time, but in that moment, we want to lift up those voices just to make sure that we're using our channels as an amplification of practice.
So we touched a little bit on the Rihanna factor, right? So I feel like that's definitely a question that has to come up. She's a powerhouse. She's an influence, obviously. She's the founder of the brand. But what is special about it, too, is that she's a cultural curator. She sits in culture. I'm not sure if this is always an advantage, though, right? The reality is, how does her presence and her mission or her vision shape your everyday, your day-to-day, and how you're leaning into your mission? But also, I would follow that up with the question, in her boldness, do you sometimes have to balance in order to reach the overall market?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. Look, she had the vision. She truly is a visionary. And so this brand was born out of what she saw as a gap in the marketplace. I'll take you through when we go through product development. We literally,
please do.
sit and there's inspiration sessions that she's a part of. We go through a design process that she's in those workshops with the team. So imagine sketching things out across the table as Rihanna and you're pitching to her, or your first campaign and you're pitching back ideas and she's giving you feedback on that. So she's embedded into the process. And so, yeah, your first couple times your knees shake and there's some of that. But I think more than anything, she's invested in the work. She also is very, very complimentary, and she is consumer centric. So most of the questions that she's always pushing the team on is, how is that garment going to lay? How does it look on a Missy individual? How does that look on a curvy individual? Let me see that fit pics for that. Or really into the materials, back to the point of like how this is designed, because she obviously loves fashion and she loves design so much. And so I think it gets us to a point of not only conceptually about where we're going, but there's the practicalities of like how this product comes to market. And then I think that she's incredibly talented in understanding, the macroeconomics of running a business every single day. And so there's opportunities she brings to us about collaborations or how things are connected that continues to inspire us. So I when I came in, I was in awe, and I think being able to work in this space, it's only continued to motivate me and motivate the team, because I think she's incredibly talented at continuing to lead and grow this business.
I think it's important to highlight that everything she does goes back to the consumer, right?
Absolutely.
So it just really is advocating for them and making sure that all products line up with their actual needs.
Yeah.
So obviously this leads to a successful brand. So let's talk a little bit about your success. How do you measure it? And we didn't talk about this. I'm throwing you a little bit of a curveball.
Right,
I apologize. But is there a KPI for inclusivity, or is it just sales overall? Or how are you really measuring what success is for the brand?
Yeah, I think we go to a couple of different lenses. I would say, I think, like most businesses and e-commerce based businesses, we're looking at CACs, we're looking at LTV, we're looking at our VIPs. Obviously, we're VIP, our subscription-based business, so those are like some of the traditional ones. I would say there's also to your point about inclusivity, I don't know if there's a hard, fast measurement. I think as I look through, I work with our creative director, we're actually thinking about V-Day, and talking through that for 26 and also summer. And then we have like all the different shoots that we'll go through in a season and how we'll capture content. We do put that stuff on the board. So it's, because when you can visually see something, it's really eye-opening where there might be a gap. And I know it's not just about, the aesthetic, but it does matter. And so if our brand shows up in one season, how are we being reflected? And so I'm really mindful of what that image is that we put out there. And so I think we continue to think through that, and it's a part of I think you have to operationalize it. It can't be something that's on the side. It has to be worked into your process. And I think it being such a value of our brand, it is something that we think about every day.
So the success of the brand is undeniable. Do you feel that you're having an impact in the rest of the category, in the retail category overall?
Yeah. I think we are. I think there's an interesting dynamic that's happening in our world. And I think when we started, with a space that had ignored consumers. And I think there have been some brands since then who have started to be a part of that space in the conversation. I think it's for us to continue to lead, to make sure that people understand that it's always going to be important to reflect communities and always being inclusive. And so, we were with some store managers even last week, and they were just talking about how, consumers come in and shop and they're blown away about sizes that we have in our stores versus some retailers used to have certain sizes, and then now they only have them online, right?
Yeah.
And so while the commitment is there, the commitment wasn't there every single day to be in store. And so I think it is top of mind for our business to continue to push that. I think we have to think about what Inclusivity 2.0 for us is, and ensuring that we are always being innovative in our approach and how we go about that work.
So, I mean, there has to be in the process some trial and error. That's the reality. It isn't just success, right? There are definitely some challenges and some risks that have come with this process. Is there anything you would highlight as like, this is a lesson we learned, make sure you don't do this? Is there any words of wisdom you would pass on for leading so boldly with inclusivity, but there are some risks you need to be aware of?
Yeah, I think the one example I would give you, I think the last panel said it, but I think sometimes, one, we've been really declarative about this. I think even when we have not gotten it always right, sometimes your community comes to your defense sometimes because you've shown up so many times in that space. That would be one. I think there's a couple seasons we didn't have what we call brawny, which is more of the larger males that were reflected. And so while we were focused on women, we didn't reflect that. And so there were a couple emails and some DMs that we heard from. And so and it had to do with production samples. There's a whole process on why we didn't have the samples in time, and which is why we didn't cast it. But to a consumer, they don't know all that, and nor do they care about all of that, right? But you can explain that to them. And so, but it was like, no, got you. As we think about inclusivity, this is also a way that we need to make sure we show up for him. And so be reflective of that. I think that's one of those ways. And I won't brush it under the rug. It is someone didn't see seen, and that if we stand for this, they actually ask for it.
You have to do it consistently.
Yeah. And so I do think, but you are what you consistently do. And so I do think, for the most part, people associate Savage X Fenty as an inclusive brand, and we want to continue to stand on that because that is who we are.
It's very true. So I think we touched on this a little bit of it is not so fun year, or hasn't so been.
You said what?
It hasn't been such a fun year based on a couple of different items, I guess. And a lot of brands that were leaning in inclusivity have been pulling back.
Yeah.
But the reality is that your brand remains steady. It's committed. You have been voicing everything your team has been doing. So for everybody in the room that's a little skeptical or has some worries, what is advice that you would give them?
Yeah. I have this conversation a lot. I have it with colleagues and friends. I think the one thing I will say is we do a lot of research on Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and there's a lot that talks about the importance of values and how they purchase, and they vote with their wallet. And so as we think about what's important to them, and as you think about building a brand and building a legacy, you have to understand who you serve and where you're going. And so I think for us, it is always, it's obviously a value, as I've said a million times. It's how our founder thought about this vision of this company. And we have seen it also be extremely beneficial for us from a financial standpoint. And I think that's what sometimes people think, is that it's on the side, it's not a part of our business plan. And I think understanding your consumer will help you unlock what are those insights, what product needs do they need, and it's just the how you bring that to market in a way that's incredibly intentional and incredibly deliberate. But I recognize from our colleagues, not everyone, was founded by a brand that was in this space. And so it has been tricky for people to maneuver between that. So I stand here understanding that and knowing that. But I also am really, really proud of the work that we do. And I think that there's also times, and we've seen those brands, and I don't want to call them out by name, where they've walked away from folks. And people have let them know And consumers will, and I think we all as consumers vote on where we want to go, and I think that's the power of our economy, right? And based on that, and so well, I probably haven't given like the perfect answer. I think one of the things I would say is that as a marketeer, I think about making sure that our marketing not only has an emotional connection, but it drives the bottom line, because that is what my remit is in terms of how I lead marketing and growth for the organization. And I do understand and recognize that we are in some unique challenges and times at this moment. However, for us, it is imperative, and it's a business imperative for us to continue to grow, that we are inclusive.
You did nail it. You did nail it. The answer.
Yeah.
It's just as simple as saying, we're all here trying to sell a product, and if you are inclusive of everybody, you get more sales.
Yeah.
It's just about follow the insights, follow the data. It's pretty simple. I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you one last question, which I actually wrote it out on my board, what your feedback was on the call, because you're new to the CMO role, and I ask you, what is some great advice people gave you that you want to share back out? Anything you want to share with everybody? Best advice you've gotten, basically, that you want to make sure you're passing it forward.
Yeah, and I hope this was the answer I gave earlier. But no, I think the one that I always take back that someone had given me early on in my career is, as you go through your career, your board of directors, make sure that those individuals are different than you. And it's one of those things that should come naturally, but sometimes we like who we like, or we're more natural to connect with other marketeers, or you're more natural to connect with, I'm from Texas, people who might be from your university or where you grew up. But I think for me, it's been an unlock in my career. I grew up in marketing and organization at Drew that was one of the best marketeers. And I always took a liking to the business side of our organization. And so I sought out business leaders purposely, and it helped round out my skill set. So when I was looking for other roles and jobs, I didn't have to just think about the marketing pipeline. I got an opportunity to be a GM, to be more holistic. And so as I think about, when I mentor individuals or have advice for folks, I'm always talking to them about their board of directors and how they should be, complement your skill set so you can obviously develop and be coached in that way. And so it's paid dividends for me, and I think it's something that we should all think about.
That was the answer I was looking for. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Opening it up to the room. We got some time. We got 2 minutes. Anybody? Sure.
This is when I turn red. This topic is actually one of my favorite topics. Not because Jess is there, because I also work on Adsmovil.
Dee Dee's in my team.
Yes,
we love Dee Dee.
Yeah.
But I actually build my career around inclusivity and diversity. That's how important it is for me.
Yeah.
You mentioned you worked at Nike and now at Fenty, which are two huge brands that do it so well, right? And there are some brands that I've connected where they're hesitant to dive into it. Whereas I think that inclusivity actually allows a brand to build their loyal fan base.
Yeah.
Right? But on the other side of the conversation, some new brands might think that it excludes the rest of the potential growth. Yeah. Right? But I think that inclusivity, like I mentioned, allows that loyal fan base. Is there a point where a brand is too inclusive? Or in other words, the do's and don'ts, or there's something, that shouldn't tap into or should tap into when they want to dive into it.
I think you have to understand like your brand values, where you're trying to go, and provide and have your own guardrails, right? Because based on the landscape, based on marketplaces, there could be dynamics of like, wow, that might not make sense for you to go that far to that way. I'm trying to think of a good example off the top of my head. And so I think that should steer and guide you. I think, or if we're going to a new category, it might be things that are adjacent to that category. It doesn't mean that there aren't new individuals you're gonna want to invite to the brand. but you still have to be core in who you are and how you show up even in that space. And then I think that authenticity, I think, will actually show, because if you try to be something that you're not, people sniff you out, or you get into a diluted space, or you get to a space that's overly saturated, and you start to not be sharp in your messaging or your product innovation or what you offer to the consumer, and so you can't be as relevant. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You were talking about that you guys were looking into Gen Z a lot, and Gen Z have like a lot of collaborations. I would like to know what are some of the collaborations that you guys are looking into, like.
Yeah,
I don't think you could share.
I know. Like, stay tuned.
In that direction.
You know, I think we think about it in a couple of different spaces. One, I can tell you filter sets. We always think about uniqueness to Rihanna. Like, one of the things that we did last year around this time was Diesel. And the reason why we collaborated with Diesel is Rihanna was Diesel's first muse when she was 18 years old. So there's always like some piece that's like authentic to her potentially. And or we'll think about new and different ways that we want to express some of our key franchises. So stay tuned. I can't give you all the pieces of the pie. But I think what we think about our marketing mix is we always want to be culturally relevant. We might think about a different moment that you sometimes would be like, that's interesting. But to be authentic in that space, collaboration might be a way that we go into that space.
Thank you.
And I think we have, you have a question.
Hi, speaking about inclusivity and diversity, I was curious to know how you guys have taken that and how that has connected back to the products and kind of the innovation that you guys think about in your products.
You're saying from the product pipeline?
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's in a couple different ways. One, our size range, right? I think as we think about coming to market in those 47 different, like in that instance, bra sizes, that's one thing. One of the things that we did that was born out of that diversity, inclusion, and thinking about our consumers was even a bra innovation. Ladies, I will say, Soft and Savage was one of my #1 bras. We were talking about this back there.
For a while.
It is everyday sensual, and it came from Rihanna actually had after having her second child, but she wanted to meet people where they were in terms of having that everyday comfort, but being very sensual and sexy. And so it's very different. There's how you want to have your sexy lace bra versus the everyday bra. So it thinks about innovation in a different way. And so that inclusivity was meeting consumers where they are, because if you know, while she's wearing X for this reason, then it opened up a different space for us of like, now this is innovation. So now we need to meet her where she is, because there's a product that she needs now to wear all day, but she wants to be comfort and sexy.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I think
Am
we
I
have
allowed
one more.
more time?
Oh,
Can I continue? We got one more?
I'll try to be quick. I love the fact that this is your first CMO role and that it is one in which you get to really highlight diversity and inclusion, and it's for a brand that does that naturally and organically. I wonder, as a fellow Black woman in like a marketing space, in that role, sometimes I feel like people feel like we have all the answers because we are minorities in a multitude of ways. How do you combat that in the sense of knowing like you don't speak for everybody when it comes to diversity and inclusion? How do you combat that? How do you elevate other people in that role to help actually be diverse and inclusive?
Yeah, really great question. I have done a lot of work, and I think I'm pretty honest with myself. First and foremost, I think no one race or set of individuals is a monolith. And so I think I start there. Secondly, I know I don't know what I don't know. While I think I'm like the ultimate cool auntie, I realize I'm an auntie now. And I joked about it earlier about me having young creatives who look very diverse across everything from sexual orientation to race to gender, etc. And I can create strategy and I can create where we're going, but it's up to me to listen to their voices too, of like what's hot, what's not hot, information of things to stay away from, not to know, because there is something around having the pulse. And so I think there's that a little bit of that discernment too. But yeah, I don't think one individual can speak for a whole race of individuals, nor do I would want to position myself as that. But I also recognize that in this seat, there's not a lot of people who look like me. And so it does come with a certain amount of privilege. It does come with a certain amount of voice. And so if I can make my colleagues and other individuals question and ask a question that they're not thinking about, or bring a different point of view, because we have all had lived experiences and different lived experiences. And so you're absolutely right. It's a fine balance of, I get to work on something that I'm super passionate about. And as I left Nike, I wanted to work somewhere that I was passionate about. And so this opportunity found me. I'm super excited about being here. So I recognize that I have that privilege. But I do recognize that there's a lot of different races, a lot of different experiences I have not lived. And so I have to defer to those individuals, but I have to lead with empathy, and I have to have some self-awareness to understand I can't represent everybody, but I can give that microphone or lend that voice and make it clear that we need to hear those voices and then make an informed decision. And I think that's my role in that seat.
Well, congratulations on the role.
Thank you.
No pressure after this question. We expect great things from you. No, but for real, congratulations on the role. Well deserved. And we're excited to see what's next with the brand. And we'll keep an eye out for collabs and the Valentine's Day Super Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.